This is First Class Aislinn Murray.
And I'm First Class Carl DeGiorgio. And you're listening to Court Conversations, a podcast of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy Alumni Association, recorded right here in Studio 1887 at the Alumni Center.
Today's episode features Lieutenant Commander Katie Ward, class of 2012, an attorney in the Coast Guard whose career path shows just how many directions a CGA experience can take you. From starting on a cutter in San Diego to pivoting to law, serving as a Special Victims Counsel, advising at the district level, and supporting high-visibility cases, Commander Ward's story is really about growth, figuring things out in real time, and not being afraid to change course along the way.
What stood out to me listening to this conversation is how much of her journey wasn't planned, but was shaped by mentorship, curiosity, and being willing to lean on what felt meaningful, even when it wasn't the obvious next step.
And I think that's something that really connects to cadet life right now. There are more options than ever, different career paths, specialties, and opportunities, and it can feel like you're supposed to have it all figured out really early. But this episode is a reminder that you really don't have to.
Exactly. And as you listen, think about how her experience, whether it's leaning on a first tour, navigating tough decisions, or finding balance through something like yoga, might apply to your own time here and what comes next.
Exactly. So, Carl, what was one insight from Commander Ward's story that really stuck with you?
Something I think that stood out to me was her approach to mentorship. I think a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to seek out others who are going to push us in that mentor role. And I think she had a really refreshing take on letting mentor opportunities just present themselves authentically and not trying to force that relationship with others. What about you, Aislinn?
Definitely. I agree. The mentorship really stuck out to me. Another thing that stuck out to me was Commander Ward's ability to consistently pivot. And she said that there are a lot of unknowns in her career, but she was so willing to use that mentorship that you talked about to dive into these new jobs, these new roles, and really learn so much about herself, so much about the Coast Guard, and so much about the people around her. And that was something that you guys will hear in the episode. She talked about each step and each pivot that she took and some of those challenges that she ran into and overcame.
Awesome.
Definitely. So we are so excited to have you here today, and we are excited to introduce our audience to Commander Katie Ward. This is First Class Aislinn Murray, and you're listening to Core Conversations, a podcast of the United States Coast Guard Academy Alumni Association. I'm here in the Alumni Center's Studio 1887 with my co-host, Lieutenant Commander Nick Martin. And we're excited to welcome this episode's alumni guest, Lieutenant Commander Katie Ward, class of 2012. Welcome, Commander.
Thank you.
The great class of 2012.
Oh, right. The great class of 2012. Commander Ward, give us your 60-second career arc from CGA to today.
60 seconds. It's fast. Okay, my elevator pitch. I think probably since where I've landed now as an attorney, all this stuff in the beginning feels like very quick because now this is like really taken up most of the space recently. But I went to a boat like most cadets do. So boat for San Diego, loved the first tour, went to PSC, pivoted to law, and now I'm going to be in my third tour for legal, the Coast Guard.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you showed up on reporting day, when you were a swab, did you imagine that you'd end up in the environmental or national security law?
No.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, in fact, when I just like parked over in the Alumni Center, I was looking over at, what's that one over there?
Leamy?
Yes, it's all like kind of on the surface. And I remember going down with the bus on our day and you're like running up and it's a little like swab. And I was like, wow, I just remember that my head was blank and I had no idea what was in front of me. And I was starting off actually as a government major. So I had some vision that maybe like this was going to form later. But then I didn't like government actually. And I switched to math and I really didn't think I would end up here. But I think we'll talk about that later. It kind of was just like following inclinations that led me here eventually though.
Yeah. So what do you think initially drew you to the academy itself?
So my sister went here, which I was hoping she'd be here with me, but another time. She was my reg staff when I was a little swab. She was the waterfront though, so she was the nice one. But her going here, of course, like opened up my eyes to it being a possibility to come here. And I think like on top of that, my dad was in the Navy, so like having a parent in the military like really opens up the aperture of like what's available when you're considering college and next steps. So him going, I very much considered the Naval Academy, Coast Guard Academy, but my sister coming here and having like the benefit of AIM really was like, this is the right path for me, especially based on like what the Coast Guard does comparatively.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, did Maggie tell you about AIM? Maggie being Katie's
My
sister.
2009 for all of those listening like us. Did she tell me about it?
Like, did she tell you, prepare you for it in any way? Like,
Oh.
did you know what to expect, or did you go in like, I'm not sure?
I think it was like, don't do these pitfalls. Like, don't be the person that shows up with like a box fan. You know, don't be dressed up with like business attire. You know, there's like things that really would have been like your downfall. She told me, but it was also kind of like, you need to experience it yourself because it's also how you'll make the best decision. You need to figure out, which is actually my first day, our day, having her in my mind is like, she did this, I can do this, was kind of like a really helpful thing. But she didn't tell me like all the tricks. She just was like, don't do these things. This is the no list. Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So fast forwarding your academy experience a little bit, take us to why like San Diego. I know you mentioned it earlier.
I think this is also probably, it's not unique. But at that time, you really don't know what you want to do necessarily. And there's, of course, like the thrust of the academy model being like, you need to get afloat because that is our bread and butter. So I think that was what I was mostly looking at. I do have some friends I went to a sector first, and that was like, not that many people could do it. So it was also almost like, don't get your hopes up because that's not really going to be a likely option for you. But it was also kind of aligning with your friends, going to a good place because you're just like becoming an adult on your own for the first time. You're like stepping away from all the support that is the academy. And it's like, you know, going out there with your friends still allows you a little bit of like base to continue on. So that was some part of the reason for going to San Diego on a boat. And I lived with my really good friends in a house that's still in the Coast Guard family. I've heard it's a great house. It has a deck on the top. And I also chose to do engineering, which I didn't think I would necessarily do if you asked me before. I thought I would also do deck because I think that's a more natural kind of like pathway. But I was curious how it would relate to like my math mind and how almost like in a way to see what I didn't know again, you know, it was hard. It's not like a proclivity I think I have for electrical tinkering, mechanical understanding. I got there, obviously, and I think most people will obviously get there. But it was like, oh, there's some things that you're just good at, and there's some things you have to really work at. And that was one of them for me. Yeah.
I think we've done a lot better job in recent years, especially with the fewer afloat billets, helping prepare cadets and explaining the EOIT option.
Yes.
Where people are understanding that, okay, maybe I didn't love my summer afloat here, maybe I was doing deck, but like there's this engineering world. And I think also people, and you'd have to help me with this, Aislinn, like cadets are getting some experience with engineering over the summer at their units to help them make that decision. But now, of course, we've added a whole bunch of jobs that they don't get experience in. To the list, which is still very fun.
Like
and
what? Like mine, finance.
Okay, that's so different. Then I felt like we really didn't have that many options when we looked at the list.
Finance, prevention, sector, DSF, and of course pilots.
DSF?
Mm-hmm.
First year of DSF.
The world is opened up. So yeah, I mean, I think probably what we were talking about generally for my story is I'm interested to see how that will either steer you or push you somewhere else.
Right.
You know, because it's so early to be attached to a specialty that I felt like going to a boat didn't, you know, marry you to being an afloat person necessarily. Right. But I wonder how like these other specialties will do that. Yeah.
What do you think was the biggest thing you learned about yourself from that first tour?
To listen to that like notion of the things that you're attracted to, like while also honoring growth points and like coming to the edges of your ability. I think those can happen at the same time. But I also think like don't use the idea that you have to be doing this to be successful to obscure the things that you are good at and want to like follow. In some ways, you feel like this construct, you have to do it this way when you go on a boat. Like there's qualifications, there's people that did it before you, there's success in the eyes of like what a cutterman is. And so I think it's easy to kind of feel like confined by that. But I learned over the years, especially seeing how it opened up afterwards, that you don't have to be. It can just be like a part of your story, but not like the whole story.
I love that. It doesn't have to be the whole journey.
You like it, of course.
Commander Martin. Boats are great.
Boats are an excellent choice for cadets leaving the academy.
We need those people. Yeah. Commander Martin's a huge advocate for boats.
I'm not an advocate, but it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah, and I think that is like very important point is that all of our classmates, it's like you do tell the stories and you enjoy the time of the boat, but it's just one part and you move on to the next thing and like you're still good. But I do think your boat stories typically are the ones that you tell.
Those are the sea stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think like this, it sounds so funny, but when I see, like we just saw the helicopter, exercise out of there and I was like, oh, this is like what the Coast Guard is. This is like outwardly how the public perceives us. It's easy to forget that because you're on the boat, you're doing the work and stuff, but it is like really important too.
Absolutely, yeah. So you talked about how engineering, wasn't your long-term path. Was there a specific moment where you realized that? Was it hard to admit that to yourself? And then how do you think you made that transition with your career?
That's a good question. Because I think that's like at tension with two things, which is that you want to be like successful and do well. But I also think when you're so young, and maybe this goes back to the point of like switching majors, you just like, you don't know who you are yet. And so I think there was like a lot more kind of like grace that you give yourself because you're like, oh, I tried it. It's not my thing. I'm going to go on to the next thing. But like as you get older, I think that's a little bit harder to do because in some sense you feel like you've like picked a path. So you need to continue to work at it. Like what does successful look like in that kind of pathway? But I look back at the time and I'm kind of like struck by how I was like, no, I'm going to try something else now. Like it's 2 years because it kind of in some ways people are like, if you switch and you don't get a specialty, it's like, it's not good for your career. You're working against yourself by pivoting like that, like especially early on. I think like to that end, it was hard. Maybe because of what I heard, it could have an impact on. But it worked out fine.
So tell us where you went next.
Yeah. So I went to the Personal Service Center, which Nick is also familiar. It's a great place to work. I think it's full of like really impressive, hardworking people. And I also think it gives you a really good vantage of the Coast Guard. And if we say so many times, like people are our most important resource, that's like really where a lot of that like consideration and time is put into it for good and for bad. I mean, I think that there are hard cases that you've worked on. And for me, that was when I first was working on cases that were tangibly connected to a person rather than like a mission or an idea, like on the boat. So it was like noticeably meaningful to me to kind of like connect in that way with a person and see like my work have an impact. That steered me to pursue law with that in mind. Yeah.
Initially, I remember when I got there, because we were lieutenants when I got there.
I was a JG. Yeah.
After like a year in Personal Service Center, like I couldn't believe I was allowed to be an XO.
Yeah.
Like the things I didn't know out in the fleet and what you get exposed to. And I think initially when we had met there, I didn't necessarily understand why you wanted to go to law school or what you had seen like at PSC that was like, oh, I definitely want to pursue law.
Yeah.
But then very quickly I was like, okay, now I understand like the cases we're working through and seeing the boards and the panels and the promotions and all the issues. I was like, okay, I get it. I get why you would come here and like think that law is a good path. Also, a lot of easy way to help people.
Yeah.
The Coast Guard.
Yeah. I think it's also, I might have mentioned this before, but at that time, it was 5-year mark where it's a huge inflection point for people, figuring out if they want to stay or go. And I applied for teaching and law because I actually, when I was at the academy, it's something I always thought I would do. And like to both ends, it would be starting over kind of. So I felt like I'm going to shoot my shot. And I think at that time, comparably, I didn't have a PIN. I didn't have a specialty. So I would say if you looked at all the candidates, it was really like a lot of other things that through the academy time grades and other stuff, I did an internship to build up the application. But sometimes you just get lucky, and that getting selected for the law program, obviously, set me on this whole long path that I couldn't have imagined. And it's also so hard sometimes when I give people advice of like, it's so consequential, that one decision. Sometimes you feel like I need to do this. I need to get selected to have the success in law. But I would say you can also go to night school. You can also try again. Like people in flight school apply so many times and get it. So I look at that time and seeing my name on the list, I was like, wow, it just is like it just felt like a huge, like the horizon opened up so far in front of me because it felt like literally it was get out or now I'm almost at 20 with Nick.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Closing in.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that specifically helped you believe that pivot was possible?
Yes, definitely. Because I think, like, of course, this is obvious. I mean, I was a math major. I didn't come to the academy with this like mindset that I'm going to be a lawyer and have to do everything in my, like, I wasn't in the law society. I didn't do mock trial. I didn't do any of those things. And the people I worked with at PSC, I had some really good mentors, like the SJA there, who helped me with the cases. And I was kind of like, am I like off base here to think I could do this? And with the captain there, the admiral, and it just was like reinforcing that I don't want to be my own limitation. And they gave me like the extra little push to try, like, because a part of it's also like ego. You know, you're putting yourself out there, and if you don't get selected, you're like, oh, maybe I'm not good. Maybe I'm not
Right.
So I think that like Dake, I talked to her particularly as well, asking like about being a math major. And I don't think that you also appreciate at that time that like that kind of mind, like the analytical mind, is well serving for lawyers too. And we have other classmates that are lawyers too. So I think like it was reinforcing in a way that like, I needed that little, to apply, and now I'm here.
That's awesome. So where did you go to law school?
So I graduated 2020, height of COVID, from Georgetown. It was no graduation. So that was like kind of a little bit of a low, celebration for something that felt really big.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, 2020, I went to my first tour as SVC in Seattle.
Seattle.
Great spot.
It is a really good spot.
Seattle was not a super popular pick
I
when we were
know.
graduating, and I don't know why.
I agree.
It is
Yeah.
really, really underrated.
I totally agree with you. It wasn't on my radar at all, and it's like it's amazing. I loved it so much. Also during COVID, and that says a lot if I lived in COVID. So.
That is true. So can you tell us a little bit about what that first law tour was for you?
Yeah. So it was Special Victims Counsel, which you know what that is.
Yes.
Yeah. Some people don't. So actually, I'll take the time to.
Yeah,
give a
that's
quick
perfect.
So if you like envision, when people are like a courtroom or a case is happening, there's like the prosecution and the defense, and the prosecution is aligned with the government, like bringing the charges against the person, the defendant, who has an attorney. The SVC is an attorney. So I think some people don't recognize it's actually an attorney.
Right.
That is detailed with their consent, obviously, to the victim in the case. And I would say, like, as you can imagine, it's largely aligned with the prosecution because they're like the key witness. So there's a lot of like cohesion between those two parties, but sometimes those interests diverge. And the SVC is a really important factor to kind of like demystify a very confusing process for most, and at a time that's like very traumatic as well. So kind of like taking all this information in, it's like a person that I've really acknowledged in myself to them as like a bridge to kind of navigate that really difficult time. So it's always a resource. Not everybody is eligible, so maybe I should clarify that. There's like different offenses and things that you wouldn't be able to get an SVC for. And it's limited too. There's only some of them. So we can't, it's just like everything. Resources are limited. But so that tour, I was a plank owner for the Seattle branch because a lot of cases like in Alaska were happening. And it was an opportunity to get face to face without the travel burden of like coming all across the country and stuff. So that 2 years went by so fast. I did some trials, which was intense. I think like it's even less intense as the SVC because you're not doing like the planning and stuff like defense counsel. It felt like it was like it was saturated with a lot of work and emotional, I don't know. The cases are hard to hear. And I think they varied in like ages and facts. And it just is maybe like a constant kind of exposure to that kind of substance is hard, especially when you have like the mindset I've believed before of being kind of like optimistic and thinking the best of people. It like naturally affects a human to just constantly get like the bad stories over and over.
Absolutely.
Especially of like people that are like your family in the Coast Guard and stuff. So I'm still kind of unpacking that effect, of like how it going forward, how you look at people and how you perceive things. And it's also kind of like when you are servicing that clientele, you develop a bias of like when you hear something as well that you have to like balance. And that's why it's helpful really having like my friend like Kristen, who's defense counsel, because she has a totally different vantage sometimes too, of like really having faith ideally in the process of it all, which I know is not perfect, but
and that's
we
our,
try.
Our friend Kristen Bradley, who's also the grade class of 2012. You'll have to edit
I will.
but there's something else with that job though, Katie, right? Like that is not a normal first tour at a law school job from what I recall.
Yeah.
And also, did you pick that? Like, did you know that's what you wanted to do? And how did that process go for you?
Both of those things are true. well, at least from what I heard, you know, because I think you'll experience this later, but there's the service needs, you know, there's a vision you have for yourself. There's the reality of what's available and what needs to be filled because it's the priority. And then the result is some mixture of those two things, because the SVCs, you're independently like a counsel for someone. So you're like kind of on your own and you're giving them advice that affects like their life and the trial and things like that. So it definitely felt like in the abstract, like as a first story, like, could I be doing this? And I'm sure people feel that in a lot of different ways, like being a boat captain, like you said. Wait, what was the question again?
I was curious if you picked it.
Oh,
like, did you got your bill list when you were grad school, and like, is that what you picked? And did you, in a way, know at all what you were in for?
No, I mean, I went to a training. They had all of us go to a training, which you have to get certified for that stuff to the point that you're doing on your own. They don't want you to be like totally like unable to do it. So I thought because I had that certification, it like nudged me over there. And then when I saw it opening up in Seattle, I was like, I would take that tour because I think maybe going back to my first point of what I perceived as a strength of mine is I wanted to do direct like client counseling representation, because I think that's where I recognized before I felt so much meaning of like of really helping a person and like connecting with a person. So I think all of this kind of folded in together. I did put it on my list. I didn't know I was going to get it because of what they said.
I think the SVC program is not as widely spread that it definitely should be. I think it's a program that provides a lot of support. And like you said, like, especially as the plank owner in Seattle, like you were the only advocate in the room for probably a lot of those situations. And, you know, it's a very like dark thing that you're dealing with. It's a very scary situation for people to be in. And it is incredibly emotionally tolling for those people. And so for the SVC, you're taking on that essentially. And that is incredibly emotionally tolling and taxing. So when did you think you started to feel that emotional toll? I feel like when you're involved in that line of work, you're right. Like having every single day the conversations around something negative can really do something to your brain and to your outlook on life. So when did you first see that?
I mean, I think it was with my first client, because seeing someone's despair is just hard, you know? And in some ways you're like, how can I help? But I only have like this much like of room to actually help you. Because at the same time, you have to honestly say, this is my role for you. Like, I cannot also be your therapist and your friend and, you know, all these things. So it's hard to be like, these are the like right and left limits of what I am to you, because I just want to help you so badly. But I feel like I was really grateful to have like Matt going through it with me as well, and some really good mentors in the program, because I just was able to like talk through stuff, because otherwise it's like, it's all confidential things, you know, like you can't just be like, Mom, you know, like I had this really hard thing happen. Like, can you help me work through it? And so it's also a world in which like when people know what you're going through, you can relate much easier. So I luckily had like a really good group of people while I was going through it. I think that there's probably some balance too of feeling like you were getting good at it. So you were helping them in a way that it was like not only just emotionally draining, but something I was like, I'm feeling fulfilled doing this for you as well.
Absolutely. Also, I don't know what the status of Seattle was, but I know now with SVCs that they work closely with the victim advocates. And I know, like you said, you had to set boundaries. You had to figure out what those boundaries were for yourself when helping this client, because in some situations, you could be that person, like that person's only person who knows about what's going on or helping them. So did you have the opportunity to work with any victim advocates? This summer, I had the opportunity to go to Victim Advocate C School, which was awesome. I've always been a huge advocate around this work. I've been leadership for CASA, Cadets Against Sexual Assault here. I created my own club here regarding mental health and helping survivors after the fact really get their life back together. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about prevention, especially within the last few years here with what's been going on in the Coast Guard. And I think it's really important for after something like that happens, like what are the resources for not only the survivors, but what are the resources for the SVCs or the victim advocates? So I would love to know who you worked with and who you were partnered with in helping those clients.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with a ton of great victim advocates. I think that one thing I noticed though is like when there's a report that's made, it's like ambush is a strong word, but the feeling of a bazillion people like coming to you and being like, do you want XYZ? Like, do you want, all these additional resources just in the sake of trying to help them, but it's overwhelming.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes I've experienced like calling them and being like, I'm an SVC. This is an SVC is. Do you want another person they have to tell a story to again? And trying to delineate what that role is to the other people that you already kind of have found maybe a connection with, like a VA, for instance. I think like you have to just be like clear about, again, what the
boundaries.
Yes, because everyone fills a purpose, especially if the person, the case is a viable one to go to trial. That's like a huge step for someone to decide to go through that kind of process. And not every case warrants trial for whatever reason. So I think if it were to go that far, you really would be like a very good resource for that person. I think after the fact of like rebuilding a life, like because my role as a legal counsel is kind of done at that point, like of whatever disposition it is, I don't really necessarily see after the fact. We do surveys and stuff of like ways in which to improve the program. And I sometimes will like follow up with my clients, but I'm also mindful that in ways like you are a reminder of it happening as well.
Absolutely.
So I think to some extent, it's also like them moving forward is them kind of like doing it on their own also without.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's a powerful story in many ways of having to do those 2 years. I think, number one, you ask people around the academy as cadets, or even when we were here, why you joined the Coast Guard, and you will get a very common answer of like, I want to be there to help somebody on their worst day.
Yeah.
When you go and do that on a cutter or in prevention or other places, it's not always somebody's worst day,
Yeah.
right? But when you go to the SVC job, like your job is
It's
the worst
always
day.
someone's worst day.
And so that's like number one, impressive and powerful, and the toughness that our officers have that do that is amazing. And it's also great that you had somebody like Matt around to go through with it, and just the power of your classmates and your friends and staying connected here and how important that is, because you don't know when you're going to need them most. And in that type of job where it's new for you and new for him, has to be like a little bit relieving to have a second opinion that you can get via text
100%.
message, pretty quickly.
Definitely. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I think you've briefly mentioned this in the past, but mental health is so important. And like you said, you're dealing with everyone on their worst day. And my dad always says to me, like on an airplane, they teach you to put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. And I think that's so important. And in that line of work, you shared like you're still kind of like recovering, and probably your body and your mind is still processing from that tour. So what were some of the lessons learned or the importance of mental health that you learned as an officer in the Coast Guard? What are some things that you did to try to keep your head above water so you could help yourself in order to help all of your clients?
That's a great question. And I don't know if you would agree, but I think the like concept of mental health has really evolved since we were in. I think it was like almost a taboo thing to say, or it was like a very extreme thing that might be like service disqualifying if whatever you were experiencing. So this like idea that you can be mindful of your mental health in a way that's kind of like taking care of it, not like this is an issue for service, is much healthier, way more balanced. I don't know what.
I agree completely, and agree and disagree. I agree that it's better now.
Yeah.
I would disagree in that everyone understands that it's better now. Even during my tour as boat captain, I unfortunately ran into a couple issues with it, and there was a lot of reticence from members going through mental health issues to be like, "Sir, I have this problem, but like, can you please like don't report it because I'm going to get kicked out." And it was then having to do the education piece. Like, no, you're absolutely not going to get kicked out for it. And like, I'm glad you came and talked to me about it, and you're going to be fine, and you're probably going to be making first class and moving on like here in the future. But there were a couple instances like that. I had parents call me, like, "Is like she's going to get kicked out, or he's going to get kicked out?" I'm like, no, they're not. So we're still catching up on the fleet-wide education, I think. But it is, I agree with you, it's much better now. I mean, here at the academy, I think when we were here, if you were saying that you were having mental health issues, it was so infrequent, I don't know how it would have been handled.
I know. I can't even think of a single person when we were at the academy that openly talked about that, to be honest with you. I mean, aside from being like, I'm stressed out, like I'm getting yelled at, it's just like those things, it wasn't correlated in the same way that it is now. And I think that also reminds me, in addition to SVC, I was Disability Evaluation System Counsel, might be called something else now. But I did work with clients that were diagnosed with different mental health conditions. So I want to bolster your point as like a PSA that it's not like if you have a mental health issue, you're immediately going to get kicked out. You like, in fact, I think there's so much more space to get treatment now and continued service than people understand at all. And I also think like whatever stories you hear could be a person that in fact did think getting out was the right thing. You know, it's not always going to be the case where people are like fighting to stay in. There's like a scenario where like, I'm ready to move on. I do have PTSD or something.
Do you want to talk about your other lawyer jobs?
Yeah.
More law.
So I think maybe going back to kind of how I was wording it before, of like going to the boat and doing engineering, it wasn't something I necessarily was like, I'm going to love this, I'm going to be good at it. I think similarly for SVC, I was like cognizant of how it touched on things I thought I would enjoy and feel fulfilled by. I also recognize like doing advocacy and trial work is not something I want to do like for a prolonged period of time. Like some people love doing litigation, like Kristen, I know we keep bringing her up, but she's been doing defense for a while now. So I think once people get tracked into that world, and I recognize like I was ready to also pivot from that kind of legal tour. And so I went to the district up in Boston, now the District of New England. And that's where I just like was exposed to all of the operations that I had seen, not all of them, but seeing like the legal advice translate to the operations was really helpful, illuminating to me of like everybody having an important role in the organization. Imagining people doing the boardings, there was a lawyer on the other line being like, what kind of fish are on the boat? What do you want to seize? Like asking all these questions of assurance for using the authorities legally. And that all translating into like a long continuum of actions together instead of just seeing the boat, the boardings and the catching drugs and stuff. There's just like so much more depth behind everything, which I knew academically, but it wasn't something that I was able to really piece together until I went to the district. And I just learned so much. It was like new crazy cases all the time. And I was originally assigned to the sector in New York, which as you can imagine, like the tempo is high down there. Like while I was at the district, there was a vessel fire on a vessel that was docked in New Jersey that unfortunately resulted in 2 casualties. And I was the legal advisor for a formal marine casualty, which was something I'd never done before. And it was like a public hearing, a week long, and it took a whole year to prepare for it. So there was just like several occasions where I really pushed the boundaries of what I thought I could do and what was available as an option. And I learned a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. I like your point about staff tours.
Yeah.
Especially where when you're leaving here and it's early and you're not looking forward to doing your staff tour, but how important they are later on to understand like the rest of the spear. You spend your time on the pointy end of the spear early and you really need to back away and look at like, okay, how does the rest of this all work? What does this all fit together? What's going on after I, seize this guy's fish?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Because I think to some extent, at least I experienced this on calls, it's motivating also to the people doing the operations when they understand like how it actually changes anything or means something what they're doing, because it's not always ending up in a seizure. Sometimes it might not feel like very meaningful to them because they sometimes feel like the person didn't do anything. They didn't issue the citation. They didn't take the fish. But there's like reasons behind it. Yeah. I think for me, connecting those two things made me a better attorney as well. Because when I gave the advice, I understood like the implications of the person on the boat and like being in terrible weather, like waiting to do the boarding and stuff. So not me, myself, I was an engineer at the bottom of the boat. like understanding tangibly what their experience was out in the fleet.
Right.
Yeah.
So important. When I was on the George Cobb for a couple weeks, they needed a boarding officer. So I went down to LA for a couple weeks just to be the BO on George Cobb, which is a 5 buoy tender that didn't do a lot of LA patrols. So we went out with them, and I remember getting kind of frustrated about like our capability to board vessels, to even keep up with vessels out there. We were just doing RBS boardings, support we were getting, and I remember the captain at the time, which would have been in 04, telling me that to remember that like the spear is 90% shaft. And like you are just doing this stuff on the end, but there's a whole lot more going on out there behind you to try to make these things work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good advice. So you were also the legal advisor for the Titan submersible, right? Or what was your role for that?
So our office was advising the admiral. We all had different roles to play, and because it was at such a high level, our SJ was prominently like the person giving advice of like what was happening during like press conferences and things like that. And I know that case in particular was just so like public that it was
absolutely
the experience of how quickly that became elevated nationally was something like I think shocking to a lot of people, but it like ramped up really quickly and everyone was trying to kind of like fill the gaps as they could. But it was also like different stages of the process, like the search and rescue stage to what comes after that is all different components of like what would be legal advice and what would be like operations and strategic advice. So, yeah.
Yeah. When you get out of here in like 10 years from now and 14 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever we're at, you see your classmates doing stuff like that. It's like two things cross your mind. Number one, and we talked a little about this in the pre-chat. It's like, okay, Katie, like, sure, who do you think you are? Like,
what do you mean? Oh, doing
these things, right? You see, like, we have classmates that are, in charge of public affairs and giving statements to the press, and it's like a very cool thing. But you're also kind of like, oh, sure. Like we took math together.
Yeah,
like, I know what your chemistry grade was.
Yeah,
mine was good.
Yours was good. I'm not worried about you. Can you really like do this? Right? It happens especially when your classmates start becoming boat captains or like. And then the second part is it's like extremely motivating, and you have like sense of pride.
Yeah.
It's like, look, these are like my friends, and they're doing these things, and I guess like I should probably try to do these things too, and like I can perform at this level if I get the opportunity. So it's very, very cool when you see your friends and classmates get those chances.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I feel like I blinked and my classmates were like, wow, we're at least at this level. But I also think, and I imagine people have said this before, maybe too as well too, of like the sense of imposter syndrome is real and it will follow you. And I think almost as you get more senior, it might even be louder because you're like, oh, I need to know what I'm doing because I'm the senior one. I am in charge of you. So I think like whenever those opportunities came up and there was a moment of like doubt of can I do this kind of thing, it was quickly followed by like there's so many people I can talk to. There are just like amazing people in the Coast Guard and particularly in the JAG Corps, not to discount any other specialties, but they will help you and they've always gone out of their way because they've done it before. Like they've been through a hearing and things like that. So I just always felt like I could do it because I had the support. Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Mentorship seems like a really common theme throughout every single pivot that you've made in your career. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Would you agree?
Oh, it's incredibly important. I think it helps you stay in the Coast Guard too.
Yeah.
One good boss can turn an entire tour around.
Yeah.
I don't think I loved my first couple of years at headquarters, and then I had a wonderful boss, retired Captain Asia Kirksey. I was probably like ready to get out if I didn't maybe get an FRC job or if I just didn't enjoy my last year, because I think I was still at that point where you say like, as long as this is fun or as long as I'm getting meaning out of my work, like I'll stay in the Coast Guard or I'll do this. But eventually, like you get to a point where there aren't a lot of jobs you're considering, and maybe you are looking outside, and a good mentor can help give you some clarity on that, or a reality check that like, man, maybe it is time to like pull chalks.
I think to that end, and you're doing this all the time because you're a professor, so you feel like a mentor to a lot of people.
I'm an instructor.
Yeah, and mentor and friend.
I'm mentor and friend.
And model.
He's not a professor.
But in the sense that you do hit a time period where you need to do that for people below you too, because like you don't realize maybe how that leader affected you to stay in. And so sometimes I'll get like calls of how did you get to this point in your career? Like, how do you do it? Tell me what to do. I always feel like it's so important to make the time, even if it's like, you're not gonna be able to do exactly like I did it because mine's a little bit meandering and not like a perfect line, but you want good people to join you in the service and you want to continue cultivating that. And it's always like hard for me seeing some people that you admire leave the organization. There's of course like a time, but it's like, I guess we're carrying the mantle forward to keep building it up.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point, because you don't realize it until all of a sudden you turn around and you're in 04. Like how many people gave you 5 minutes for a result or an impact that they would like never see or hear about. And now like we got to do it. Right. It's our turn. And sure, like maybe you'll never hear about what happened or you don't know the impact, but you got to pay it back, and you know how important it can be.
Totally agree. I think that I didn't touch on this, but it goes back to something before about mental health and like caring for yourself, of like my time in balancing what I would have like, and probably what most people would say was like emotionally taxing, was yoga.
Yes.
And I think that's what I was saying before of this evolution of what mental health is and like caring for yourself, because back then like yoga was just like doing postures, I was like, oh, down dog's hard, my shoulders hurt, and like coming from that time to now, which at this point I've been teaching for 10 years, it's just so much more than that. And I realized like I didn't want that personality to be separate from my military personality. Like those things can be bridged in a way that's beneficial to me and to them, because that is like part of my whole self, like being the yoga teacher and all that stuff that like gives me the balance. And then I think I've like opened the door maybe for other people to enjoy it as well. So I've taught it at my units and stuff. If you haven't tried it, yoga is a really amazing thing in so many ways. So I couldn't recommend it more. But now I'm in a transition period. I'm finishing my third degree, an LLM, and it's at the Fletcher School, and it's in like international relations and national security, environmental law, a lot of things. But I got to choose my adventure, so I picked my classes. And now after this tour, I think I'm going to go back to DC. But I haven't heard of my job as yet. Yeah, so we'll see.
I'm excited to hear what you think of headquarters the second time around, hopefully as an 05.
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah, be very different.
Both of us.
Very different.
Yeah.
I expect it to be, at least.
It's just like a very interesting time in the world right now. And so it's also like, especially as a legal advisor, and also being in an academic setting, of like kind of taking all of that in and like is your role, with very big prominent things of like seizures in Venezuela and stuff that the Coast Guard's a part of. So it's very rapid, and I think law of the sea is so relevant right now, like in more ways than people probably could even thought. Like in class, people are asking all the time, like, what does this mean? What's a flag vessel? Like, all because it's just like so relevant.
Yeah.
I guess I can't think of a better word than that. So I'll be interested to see what that looks like at headquarters level, because it'll be a lot of that stuff, maybe.
That is 3 incredibly different law tours.
I know.
SVC,
Yeah.
then the call your servicing legal office to this.
Yes. But in some ways, all reinforcing. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think it's brought you? I actually have 2 questions. One, for the yoga, do you have a specific yoga practice that you do?
I think I'm naturally attracted to like a power flow.
Okay.
Like a vinyasa power flow, which is what I'm going to teach today, depending on what they want to do, I guess, as well.
Probably that.
But I think I sometimes dabble in like yin yoga, which like before
I
bedtime.
love yin yoga. So healing. That's also amazing for your line of SVC.
Yes. I would say in some ways it's almost more challenging, because as soon as you slow down moving, which is almost a distraction from your mind turns on, the volume turns up, and you're kind of like there in postures and like thinking about things. It's always interesting what you feel like you're drawn to, or maybe what is actually what you need more of is the thing you're not doing, because you're like avoiding it.
Right.
But they're both, I think there's so many practices I love about it, but I probably do power flow most. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then for your lawyer side of things, you've had, like Commander Martin said, very different law tours. So do you think you've had a favorite line of work that you wish you stayed longer or something like that?
That's a good question. And I was actually thinking about this. You're in kind of a different place now, because there's almost like a mindset of uprooting over and over again that you almost feel like excited about the next thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know what it feels like to actually be in something for a very long time. And I also recognized each of those tours to me felt difficult and challenging, that I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for like a little bit of a recalibration, like for the next thing. So I don't know if I would say like I would have liked to stay somewhere, aside from the fact that it's like nice to be rooted and to be good at something. Getting competence and like really feeling like you can do something is nice. It's a nice feeling, like, and having a job, repeatedly going into a new job, and you're like, I don't know how to be a boat captain. I don't know how to do SVC, and it takes a long time to feel confident. So for that reason, I think staying, it's really nice. But yeah,
I would agree. This is probably the first job where I've really felt like staying would be nice after you uproot, you move, and then especially with the operational tours, even when you get good at it, you're tired by the end of it, and you're ready to do something new. And at headquarters, sure, like I got good at doing EPM 1 things, but like that's also a little bit wearing out and not as maybe like refreshing at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then here it's like, okay, I know I like being a teacher and like I feel like I'm getting good at it. Yeah. I can understand that. Like and being ready to move. But at the same time, like I'm interested to see how you feel after you do headquarters for a while, get used to the grind and like feel like you're competent at it. And
Definitely. Okay. We are at our rapid fire advice for cadets section.
we need a like horn.
Yeah, we do. Ready?
Yes. Ready.
One piece of advice for someone considering a career pivot.
I would say with the reasons why you want to pivot. If the pivot is because you just feel like you want to do something easier or you're following like what your intuition says interests you, I would just kind of sit with the reasoning. And I would also like look at like what you've already cultivated as far as your strengths go and does that align with it? I can't imagine why people would pivot for bad reasons. So I think like largely follow your gut is what I would say. And if it doesn't happen the first time the way you thought, like maybe it'll happen the next time.
Love that. How do you find and cultivate mentors?
Oh, I think recognizing that looking for a mentor that's everything to you is not going to be probably the way to find the mentors you need because every person is maybe like a different mentor to you for different times of your life for different reasons. So I think like I just naturally was drawn to people that either I was impressed by, wanted to emulate, saw they struggled through the same things I did, and immediately was like, help me. So I think to find that, and I know that might be hard for some people of like putting yourself out there, but I couldn't imagine someone like turning you away. So just like try. And I always think that you'll gain something that you might have not even have expected from them as well. Yeah.
Love that. What does success mean to you now?
That's a good question. We were just talking about this in my class. What does success look like? Because I think at some point in time, you start to really like try to understand how success relates to happiness and how they either reinforce or like detract from each other. Because if you are attached to the idea of like success being like outward, ego driven, I don't know if that necessarily will give you happiness at the end of the day. Like, what will you look back on your life and be like, I'm happy I did that thing? So to me, I feel like success is like trying my best, feeling aligned with my authentic self, and helping others.
I love that. What Coast Guard skill translates everywhere?
Squaring your meals.
Oh yeah, eyes in the boat. I think that this is probably a little bit reductive, but that we are generalists because I just think we come here, like the people that are drawn to the academy are probably already very ambitious, motivated, capable people. In some ways, like the way that we take the pathway of trying different things and like dabbling in different tours, like really builds you out to be like, oh, I'm capable of quite a lot of things. So that idea of flexibility, adaptability, all of those things are, I think you very much learn in the Coast Guard because it's just like a small service and it requires it. So I think that's a strength that will really serve you well after.
That concludes our rapid fire section. Thank you so much, Commander Ward, for taking time today to come back to the academy, watch the Helo Ops that were happening today.
Yeah,
we've really loved having you in Studio 1887. So thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thanks for visiting, Katie.
Yeah.
Looking forward to lunch. I will miss yoga, but I'm sure it will be wonderful.
What? Just kidding.
All right. That wraps it up.
Cool.
That was our conversation for today. Thank you for joining us here in Studio 1887. Please stick around for a few more minutes as I spotlight what your impact looks like in action here at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in a short closing segment we're calling the Alumni Impact Interlude. Financial support from the Alumni Association is a game changer for the overall cadet experience. Learn more from the following cadet who is directly benefiting from your support. It's time for the Alumni Impact Interlude. Last March, 4 management majors participated in the Collegiate Sales and Negotiations competitions for the first time, competing across 3 separate events, including a negotiation competition and a speed sell competition. They went up against 12 other schools across the nation, including the United States Air Force Academy, Texas A&M, Kansas, Oklahoma State, amongst others, and delivered outstanding results both individually and as a team. Of note, First Class Seiji Gonzalez took 2nd place, and First Class AJ Bazzelli took 4th place overall across all submissions in the speed sell competition. I'm sitting with them both today to talk about that experience made possible by the Alumni Association's Management Fund. which helped cover travel costs. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
So I'm going to open it up with First Class Gonzalez. So can you explain to our listeners in more detail what this competition was and why you all wanted to participate in it?
Of course. So the competition was it was a collegiate sales and negotiation competition, as you mentioned, against all these other schools across the nation. And for us, it was a chance to step into a completely different kind of high pressure environment. Instead of being in a classroom setting, we were competing against students from schools across the country in events that tested like communication, professionalism, preparation, and the ability to think on our feet. We wanted to participate because we wanted to build these sales and negotiation skills that translate far beyond just the business major and far beyond Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Academy. And these values, they apply in leadership, they apply in building relationships and understanding other people's needs. So kind of it was a great opportunity for us management majors to represent the Coast Guard Academy, our peers, everyone else, and to challenge ourselves against strong competition and kind of gain that experience in a field that we don't always get to practice in that kind of a realistic format.
So you guys are both management majors. I'm going to switch over to First Class Bazzelli. You took fourth in the speed sell competition. What were you selling and what was your approach to that challenge?
It was I believe like a 90-second job pitch, basically selling yourself to Loves and Speedco, the company. You were basically marketing yourself, sharing about your job traits, the unique things you bring to the table. And I think a couple other like just unique traits that you have. But the thing was, we as coasties kind of have a specific set of skills. Transfer that to the civilian market was like, probably one of our challenges because we wanted to make sure they understood that.
And you guys do have to pull the resume, which is probably a little premature for cadets to have to worry about.
Yeah.
What was that like
Yep.
for you guys?
It was extremely foreign. So I kind of just like, we got sent like a template and an example from Lieutenant Commander Gaylor and Lieutenant Commander Martin. And I was going, I've never done this before. All I've done was a Coast Guard Academy application, maybe some of my tax statements. And that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely new experience. Very happy to kind of like, dive into something like that as it prepares us for something even beyond the fleet. Once, if any, we become alumni and we want to provide back towards our peers, our people, that's definitely something to look forward to and glad that we can experience it now. So
Yeah.
we're ready for it in the future.
Awesome. So First Class Gonzalez, can you walk us through the negotiation competition? What was that?
Of course. So Mr. Bazzelli and I never really did the negotiation aspect as that was left to First Class O'Brien and First Class Sergeant, who are now graduated class of 25. But the negotiation competition essentially put you in a scenario where you have to prepare for a structured business negotiation with another, like essentially your opposition, and then execute it against them. And you have to understand your own side's goals, aspirations, limits, while also trying to read the other teams. So it was like kind of like playing chess, but like in a business sense. And it was just really interesting to see the differing schools like go against each other and how they approached like the build up as well as their preparation and how they even reacted to a lot of what was put on the table. Like we had a couple instances where like our teammates would come back out after the negotiation competition and be like, we said this and the other team just lost it. Like they did not know how to react. And we were over here like, like getting those, like celebrating those small wins because like we mentioned earlier, we have never experienced something of this sort in like such a realistic environment against these professionals. Like these other schools have been doing it for years.
That was their major. Like I think sales was their major, and
Wow.
it was such a unique experience because it was so foreign to us, and them to go out and do that with the prep that they did showed like how important it was and how like useful it was for us too, because we were like, we didn't know that's how that worked. Like so to gain that insight was very nice.
Well, and I think it provides you guys a different perspective too of the value of the academy education and what you're getting here. Like we had some sort of an advantage. I think that's probably useful too for you all to sort of see from the outside, like, oh, the education we're getting here is pretty good.
Very
Those
true.
leadership skills are
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, and the opportunities, like again, like the fact that this was funded in part by alumni dollars. Like we, prior to this opportunity, in order to do it, had no one that be introduced to us and it'd be funded by alumni dollars. Like that opportunity to go out into the civilian sector, if you will, and do those competitions makes us a more like well individual, like group of individuals. So we can go do that later in life. Actually do it in a business sense, like a real one, not just like a competition.
Yeah. Well, so for the final question, let's talk about that. What were some of the biggest takeaways for each of you in participating with this competition, and what do you think are some of those lessons that you're going to carry into the fleet?
Hmm. I can go first. I know one of the biggest things for us, and that was thanks to Commander Martin and Commander Gale. When we had the expo in the beginning and the end, their main like directive to us was go to the other tables, meet those people, shake their hands, like get the LinkedIn's, like talk to people. And again, that's like foreign to us outside of like a formal like event where we're going out and like shaking officers' hands or enlisted hands, but what we're supposed to do in terms of interaction. And so the one of the biggest takeaways was definitely the emphasis on building those relationships, keeping those relationships, and circling back with those people, actually caring about what they have to offer you and showing them what you offer in return.
Awesome.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was that preparation creates confidence, but adaptability is what really separates you from others. It really only occurs in that moment. So you can study, you can prepare as much as you want, but once in the heat of that moment and like stress is high, success depends on how well you listen, how slow you take it. And it honestly applies into the fleet as well. Like in these high stress, high tension situations with migrant interdictions, drug interdictions, and operations of that sort, you need to understand that. And that's of course the academy prepares us for as well with all these all the academics and the military trainings, as well as swap summer and CGAS for that matter. But it really prepares you for that. Once it kicks in and tensions are high, you gotta click, lock in, and just prepare to perform. And that's really what the academy did. That's why we kind of succeeded where we did. So.
I think that's kind of what does support too, because again, any experienced people going into a sales competition, we didn't know how to really sell anything, but we knew that we didn't know, but it turned out that we had all this high stakes pressure that the academy just kind of naturally gives upon us. And really when it came down to adaptability part of doing the speed sales, doing the negotiation, that was something that was somewhat foreign to us, but we were able to channel the skill set that the academy has given us to be successful over there.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me. It's really cool to get like a sneak peek behind this, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you to our alumni community for your continued engagement. You are what keep this community strong and thriving, especially our members. Membership in your alumni association matters. It empowers connections between our alumni and the academy to develop thriving and enduring relationships. It supports state-of-the-art and margin of excellence enhancements for the Corps of Cadets. And membership also comes with some pretty cool benefits, like access to professional development and certifications, unique connection opportunities to grow your network, discounts and savings when welcoming back the whole family for homecoming, and so much more. Your membership even supports projects like this podcast. So stay connected, stay up to date, and ensure that your ties to the Long Blue Line remain strong. Become a member today at cgaalumni.org/1887. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and share with your network so these stories can continue to reach and connect our community. Until next time.